Okay, so this is Algebra 2, the quick review on trig ratios. All right, so if you're going to understand the trig ratios, you have to first off remember what each ratio is. All right, and so real quickly, remember the ratios go to the acute angles of the right triangle. There's an acute angle, there's an acute angle, right? So we have either A or B. Our example here is the sine of A. So when you look at the angle A, then little a is the opposite side. Of course, C is the hypotenuse. It's across from the right angle, and that will make side B the adjacent side. Okay, the adjacent side is one of the rays of the angle that's not the hypotenuse. Okay, so now that we have that all set, now remember the sine of A is the opposite over the hypotenuse, right? The opposite over the hypotenuse. So for this example, it's going to be A over C, right? Opposite over the hypotenuse. Then we should know what the cosine is, and we should think the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So when you look at angle A, which side is the adjacent side? That would be side B, right? And then again, the hypotenuse is C. So the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then the tangent, and we got to remember the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. All right, so from angle A, the opposite is A, and the adjacent is B, so A over B is the tangent. With that, you should also know all the reciprocal relationships. And so you should understand that the cosecant of A equals 1 over the sine of A, or vice versa. The sine of A, you could swap these two, right, equals the cosecant of A. They are reciprocal relationships. So by the way, if I wanted the cosecant of A, it would be C divided by A, right? C, side C divided by side A, the hypotenuse divided by the opposite. Cosine, what's its reciprocal function? That would be the secant. And I tell my students, the reciprocal always has to be, one will be the regular and the other will be a co. So, you have sine and cosecant. You have cosine, so you need one without a co, and that would be secant, right? That's the way it works. And again, secant and cosine are interchangeable. And then, of course, tangent, what's reciprocal of the tangent? And that would be the cotangent. So cotangent for angle B is what we're talking about here. All right? So reciprocal relationships, you should know those and have those cold and know those without any problem at all. All right, so if you're given a problem like this, find cosine y. What they want you to do is they want you to find, excuse me, they want you to find in this situation the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Okay, so I'm going to go to angle y. In respect to angle y, 5 is the adjacent side. Again, a ray of the angle that is not the hypotenuse. And z is the hypotenuse, and I don't know z right now, so I'm going to have to use the Pythagorean theorem to find z. So z, the hypotenuse, is always the square root of the sum of the two sides squared. So this is going to be the square root of 125, right? Square root of 125. And let's see, I can divide 125 by 5, right? That's a 5 times 25. So to simplify, I can take the square root of 25, and I end up at 5 times the square root of 5. Okay, so to finish off, what is the ratio of the cosine of y? It's the adjacent 5 divided by the hypotenuse 5 times the square root of 5. These 5's divide out, but look, I also have to rationalize my denominator, right? Multiply the bottom by the square root of 5. Whatever I do the bottom, do the same thing the top. And my final answer would be the square root of 5 divided by 5 is the value of the cosine, the adjacent over the hypotenuse. All right, know your relationships. If SOHCAHTOA helps you to understand sines opposite over adjacent, and the cosine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, and the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is opposite over the adjacent, then great, use SOHCAHTOA. But whatever it takes, you got to know those. And then secondarily, you got to know the relationships of the reciprocal functions. Then when you're trying to find something, always start with that angle and then give the adjacent and the opposite in respect to that angle the hypotenuse never changes.